That's correct. One of our biggest problems is humans, and it happened inadvertently years and years and years ago. The U.S. government actually suggested that people plant certain species in their yards for protection and other things like that, and unknowingly these would get out of control and get into our very precious areas and start pushing out precious species in those areas.
Well, I don't want to, to say anything against all those people who encourage that kind of thing, but God created this earth and He put the plants exactly where they are and in the regions for a reason, I think.
That is absolutely correct.
And maybe we shouldn't mess with His original design. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it would have been nice to think of that way early on.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, RNoble is the company that we're going to talk about today. Maybe you can share just a little bit about your background. How did you get involved in something like this?
I actually grew up in the woods, so to speak. Well, I grew up in a house and everything.
House in the woods.
No, that was my solitude, the place where I would go just to have some fun with my friends and enjoy the frogs, the birds, and nature, so to speak. And it's always been a passion. So I ended up going and getting my wildlife management degree from Hocking College. And which was great, by the way. I have nothing but great things to say about their instructors. And it opened my eyes to a whole lot more, and I was able to be employed shortly thereafter and learn how to deal with invasive species and the importance of getting rid of them now and trying to fight back and protect what we still have. And in doing so, one thing that gets you is seeing the returns. You can talk all day about how important it is to do these steps, but unless you really see the benefits of doing these steps, it really doesn't hit you. So when we started to see orchids come back and a lot more morel mushrooms in places where they weren't for the last several years, it really struck a chord. And I thought, wow, I need to do a little bit more than just, this company. So
yeah. So when you talk about the benefits of it, you're just talking about seeing the natural beautiful things that are gone, that are being destroyed, come back.
Yes. And then not only just beautiful things, but essential things. A lot of pollinators really, really depend on our native species. And, when you have bush honeysuckle and autumn olive and things like this that grow, they leaf out earlier in the spring than our native species do, so they steal the sunlight from the ground, which tends to not activate our native species. And so the more this happens and the more these honeysuckles and non-native invasives grow, the less things that we get for our pollinators. And it also, for example, garlic mustard. Garlic mustard's a really bad one, and there's data that suggests and has been proven that it actually hurts fungus in the soil. So if you go to your morel mushroom sites and you're not finding your mushrooms so much anymore, but you're finding garlic mustard, guess what?
That's why.
That's why.
Oh, and it's a very sad thing if morel mushrooms go away.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
it's a
they're
huge,
delicious.
Yeah. Everybody loves their morel mushrooms. And also on a side note, fungus is an integral part to oaks and orchids and other plant species that are native that we need or that deer need, and all wildlife's connected in this web.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it is. It's this intricate thing, and I just again go back to God's creation and how He created it to perfectly reproduce itself and seed and all in the right places, in the right climates, in the right soils. And so how do you help people specifically in their homes or their land?
What I can do for the average person is go out to their land and diagnose what species they have. And, as far as non-native invasives and the trouble species. And the first step is really knocking those out and getting rid of those. And then after that, we can diagnose what you have that's valuable or the potential of things that you have that's valuable, and then move on to other things and installing, butterfly gardens and other possibilities, just depending on your soil makeup and your land.
So when you're saying land, does it necessarily mean somebody who's got acres, or are we talking about somebody in town even that just is interested in, yeah?
It can go either way. Honestly, the project and my services is a bit more geared towards acreage. However, if you have a whole lot of plant species on your property in a subdivision, I'll come and look at it for you and give you advice on, butterfly gardens or native gardens or whatever you can do to improve your land health. But yes, acreage is really my main focus.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So when people call you, they're usually having problems. And first of all, what areas do you serve?
I am serving Hocking and Fairfield to start off, and really the thing is when I go into somebody's area, somebody's land, it can be forest. It could be if you have a creek running through your land. I also do water quality, but the main focus for me is to try to improve that land health and educate people also.
Mm-hmm. So when people call you from these areas, what specifically maybe is the biggest problem? Because obviously this area is all connected, and so I would think that you run into the same problems over and over.
Absolutely, and it's mainly honeysuckle, bush honeysuckle that is, barberry, which people used to plant underneath their windows as a protection. It's a little thorny little species. And I've found barberry in some of the most remote forests in Hocking Hills, wondering how the heck it got there. And it got there from birds. It got there from people planting it in their subdivision yards or what have you, and birds brought it in there. But also,
so
autumn
those
olive is really
subdivisions
bad.
do cause some problems.
Oh, absolutely.
People in town who are planting things that aren't native. The birds or the animals are taking it and they're messing up then our other natural wildlife, our acreage.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the worst fears is a monoculture. And that happens quite often. And that is when you have one species that dominates an area and basically pushes everything out, blocks everything out because it grows so much faster than everything else. Cornfields are an example of a monoculture. A long, huge lawn that somebody has that they mow, like 2 acres of mowed lawn is a monoculture. Obviously we need our farmers, but that's another thing that I'd like to offer is to encourage people to let their land, let their yards grow back, to stop mowing so much. If they could save a nice rectangle in their area and plant native grasses there, helps pollinators, which helps your gardens, which keeps things going. Without pollinators, we have no more food.
I live in town, and I'd be willing to jump on that to not have to mow my grass and just let the land grow back to its natural state. You think they do?
It's good within reason. You do have some rodent problems in town, but yeah.
So you're saying that people with large tracts of land and grasses or fields, we might call them, rather than mowing them, you encourage them to just kind of let it go back to its natural state.
Absolutely, and not every single square foot of it. You can mow some. Everybody likes a nice looking mowed lawn, but if you're constantly out there just mowing just to mow, you might want to consider letting some of it grow back and giving me a call or an email and talking about what different prairie grasses can be planted there or flowers and stuff, which can bring back a lot more pollinators, butterflies, and so on and so forth.
How beautiful would that be to see more fields of flowers and prairie grass and instead of the weeds and the whatevers?
Well, sure, and then a lot of those weeds are important as well. But there's a lot of butterflies that we just don't see anymore. Different species that have gone since I was a boy. And it keeps happening, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So the more we do now, the more we can save what we have and encourage other things to come back to our area.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk more about the butterflies when we come back. Talking to Jason Duchamp today, owner of RNoble, which is restoring native Ohio biodiversity with land health education. We're excited about what he has to share with us today on Fairfield County's refreshing 90.9 FM. FM, we're talking about going native today with Jason Duchamp, owner of RNoble, which is a educational resource to help you kind of fix what's wrong in your land and help you get back to what nature provided and all of that. And really it's about preserving what what grows naturally and kind of just restoring that
Yes.
natural health to our lands.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's extremely important, and as you had referenced before, how certain things were in certain places. That's a very important aspect of explaining this to people, is that in different countries, you have different checks and balances for different plants. And so nothing gets too haywire. Everything keeps itself in a nice community of relationships of botanical species. Once you take something that is quarantined off, we'll say, by geographic regions, be it oceans or mountains or continents, and you take some of that and put it onto another continent, there's no checks and balances. And so these things tend to thrive and take over and spread much more rapidly, which disrupts the balance that it just entered.
Yeah. And so one of the things you mentioned that are taking over around here are like the honeysuckle bush.
Yes, the honeysuckle is a really bad one, but also we have garlic mustard, autumn olive, privet, Japanese stiltgrass is a big one coming in, Japanese barberry, multiflora rose, tree of heaven. Got a beautiful name, but it's a hellish tree, if I could say that.
Yeah.
It's a really tough one to get rid of. But yeah, the list goes on and on. And for a complete list, you can look at ODNR's website, and they have a list of invasive species.
So what can somebody do who has this stuff just taking over their land and they want to restore it back to nature?
Well, again, the first thing to do is give me a call. Or find me send me an email or find me on Facebook.
How do people get a hold of you, by the way?
Email is RNoble, RNoble.LLC@gmail.com. And I'm also developing my Facebook page, and I'm getting ready to get my website going. So right now, my email and my Facebook is the best way to get a hold of me. But what I'll do is I'll come into your property and see what value you have as far as good native species, and also diagnose the bad stuff, the non-native invasives. And you get rid of the bad stuff first, and then you just...
So how do you do that? Just pull it out?
Well, it depends on the species. There's many different techniques depending on which species it is and how it's growing. So,
and how do you keep it from coming back?
Constantly monitoring it. Once you kill it, again, some can be pulled and others need to be treated with herbicide. But once you treat it and take care of it and you believe that it's gone, excuse me, you have to constantly monitor. And by constantly, I don't mean like every week or every day, but once every 2-3 months, just kind of take a look around and make sure that they're not coming back. And that's part of my package as well, is that I'll come back and I'll monitor to see
so
if
it's
things
a
are coming
never
back.
Ending, like you're never just going to be able to let your land just go.
That's correct.
Because it's constantly, they're constantly invading.
That's correct. And some people believe that, hey, well, that's just the natural order of things. And it is a debate. It's a major debate. But being the education that I have and the experience that I have, it's not a good thing to let it go. We are losing so many, like I said, butterflies and other, we don't have as many birds of certain species coming back to our areas because we have these other shrubs taking over. Migrating birds is a huge thing with non-native invasives, because when they migrate to go south, so to use a little phrase that a friend of mine, Jim Osborne, used, if you give a bunch of Skittles to your kids, they're going to run around crazy for a while and then they're going to crash.
Yeah.
Well, what the birds eat off the honeysuckles and a lot of these non-native invasives are just like that. They lack the calories, they lack the important stuff to keep these birds migrating farther. And sometimes some of them die of starvation, or they hang out too long eating their Skittles and end up passing.
Yeah,
and don't make the migration.
Because of the cold.
Yep.
Wow. You just have no idea how every single thing on this earth depends on something else.
That's right.
And when you start messing up the natural order of things, everybody, it's like a domino. Everybody is affected, and including the humans.
That is absolutely correct.
Eventually, it's going to affect our own health as well. So you talk about going native. What does that mean?
It's gladly it's becoming a new trend. I see in some of these nurseries that they have a little corner that says native species, and so on and so forth. And that is just what we've been talking about, eliminating non-native invasives and restoring plants that are meant to be here in Ohio. So some of these plants include dogwoods, hazelnut, sumacs, redbud, spicebush.
These are all natural native plants to our
absolutely.
area. Gotcha.
And they're good for the wildlife, and they're good for every aspect of everything. Elderberry, and for monarch butterflies, swamp milkweed is great.
Swamp milkweed. Now, some people say that milkweed is a problem because milkweed becomes invasive in some ways. I don't know.
Not so much. It kind of depends. You have a couple different kinds of milkweed, but it's not really on our radar as being a problem. Most people believe common milkweed is the best milkweed for monarch butterflies. It is a good one. They do like it a lot, but research has shown that the swamp milkweed is a little bit more tender. And you kind of need it, obviously, it's called swamp milkweed, so you need it in a little bit more moist areas.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that, then the common milkweed is fine as well.
Interesting. So all of these things now, if somebody's wanting to plant a butterfly habitat or garden, what you just tell them to plant some of this swamp milkweed, or is there more involved?
First, looking at the area where they want it is most important. You have to make sure the soil's right and the other adjacent areas are correct. If someone has a really hard clay soil, it's going to take some more work to make the soil able to accept certain plants. So that's the thing is what I do is so site specific. There's no really good rule of thumb just for everybody, because everybody has a different kind of property, different soil and everything.
Yeah,
So.
and it sounds like that you really just need to take what nature gave you in your land and restore that and just enjoy whatever nature brings us. So maybe you aren't suited for butterflies, but maybe you're suited for the mushroom or some other really
That's
awesome
right.
aspect of nature.
Yep.
And so just being willing to take whatever God plants on your land naturally.
Amen. Yep.
should be the goal.
Yep.
Okay, and you can help us figure out what kind of land we have and what should be growing there naturally.
That is correct. Property location and soil content is a major factor in deciding what native plants to buy, and I can help you with that. And so I can come out and diagnose, first of all, your problems, and then find out what you'd like. And so determining what you have and what you like, we can make a list and you can go out and buy it.
Yeah, very good. Well, that is Jason Duchan. He is the owner of RNoble, which stands for Restoring Native Ohio Biodiversity with Land Health Education, if you want to know something about it.
And if you want to, you can go to the ODNR site, www.odnr.gov. /Go Native, and they have a lot more interesting facts about this subject.
Very good. Or you can get a hold of Jason at rnoble.llc@gmail.com, or just look him up on Facebook, Jason Duchan,
That's
spelled
right.
Duchon. And Jason, thanks so much for sharing your vast knowledge today of our wonderful land that God created us to enjoy.
You're very welcome. Let's bring Ohio back.
Yes, bring Ohio back. Go Native. Thanks for joining us on Fairfield County's Refreshing 90.9 FM. We are live streaming at refreshing909.com. We bring you real people with real answers every Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Catch the replay today at 5 o'clock. You can also download these programs off of our website, refreshing909.com, and you can download all 30. We have more than 30 local programs each and every day, including 10 new programs every week on Community Accent. We are the station